Hey, it's Strong. I've got another movement of the day post for you. Today's mod is episode 59, and we're going to talk about the difference and how to execute a lockout in the gym and outside of the gym. So first we need to define lockouts, and I'll tell you the short of it. I am going to basically give you the proper ways to stand. I know, it's when's it gonna end? But listen, this is all important stuff. So otherwise I wouldn't talk about it. All right. The definition of lockout, first of all, because I know there's some people say you shouldn't lock out ever. All right, the definition of lockout is really just to take our joints to its biomechanical end range of motion, and all of us need to be able to do that and should do that. Now, how you do it, when you do it, is what we're going to talk about. The short end of it, again, as far as how you lock out, is the proper way to lock out would be that we are using the muscles surrounding the joints to straighten that leg or arms. It's another way to look at it. When I say lockout, you could just think of easier way to think of it is just straight arm, straight leg. Okay, so we need to use the muscles surrounding the joints to achieve that straight arm, straight leg versus bone on bone versus compression. All right, so let's get that out of the way, and now we're going to talk about the shorter side, which is how to lock out in the gym, and then we'll talk about how to lock out outside the gym, or in other words, how you stand. So in the gym, whenever we have a lockout position or we call for a lockout position, the biggest takeaway here is that we're talking about locking out when we're trying to create strength and stability on a stable foundation. So we would not lock out during a dynamic motion. So for example, when we jump and we land, that's dynamic. We land without a locked knee. We land soft knee. That soft knee absorbs that force. That soft knee allows mobility through the hips so that we're able to spring into any direction. When we're on a stable foundation and we are doing, basically you could think of it more about isometric movement versus a dynamic movement, such as a handstand or let's say a one-leg deadlift, where we want to straighten the leg at the top to finish the move, which was a couple mods back. Okay, so this is one example where we finish the move and it involves a lockout. Then taking that straight leg example of the deadlift, and I would just everybody not only needs to be able to take the joints to the end range of motion. That locking out is a very is actually a show of your strength and body control, right? This is why martial artists, right? You kick with a straight leg, you achieve lockout at that impact. Dancers, all sorts of swimmers, at some point you're going to have that motion where the locked out position is going to give you the most strength, and with that strength and control comes the gracefulness that you see. Anyway, the example we'll use here of a one-leg deadlift, right? So when we're coming up from that deadlift and we're at the top, we need to straighten that leg to lock it out. So here are the cues. Instead of thinking of your knees, okay, I want you to think about your quads. So you squeeze through the quads. That's going to lift up the kneecap. And you squeeze all the way to straighten that leg, including that full hip extension. That's going to squeeze your glutes. You want to think about pressing the floor down and away with your feet, which is also going to help you get that cue to lengthen, okay? And the easiest way to do this and not have to worry about all of that is to think of the tagline that I always say at the end of all of my workouts, which is to just squeeze everything. If you just squeeze everything, you squeeze all your muscles, that's going to take care of locking out the joints properly, okay? So, and again, this is an example of how you would finish the move. the lockouts that I speak of outside of the gym, we're going to talk specifically about how we stand. So we talk about this because no matter how much we work out, we spend more hours not working out than working out, right? So outside of the gym, when we're standing, or in this particular case we're talking about standing, but in general, stuff we do outside of the gym, the habitual things, the things that we do without knowing, or due to our repetitive motions required in our daily living or our job, those are the things that actually build up in terms of having any issues with imbalances and compensation. Those are the things that build up and then show up, present as injuries, versus an injury that happens much less often as a one-off incident. Okay, it's usually the result of all the buildup. So this is why this is important. So when we stand, the people who stand locked knee with too hard of a locked knee will tend to jam the back of their knees behind the alignment of their ankles. So it's kind of hard to really see with what I'm wearing, but I wouldn't show you my pudgy knees anyway. So just feel it for yourself, or look at yourself in the mirror, and you should be able to see and feel the difference. So instead of locking out like this when you're standing and impeding blood flow, okay, I want you to use the concept or the concern with blood flow as the biggest thing to think about when we're standing. This is why some mods back I did the mod on the micro hip hinge, because when we're talking about standing for a long period of time, we want to have a slight micro hip hinge to allow the blood flow. Okay, in this area, now we're going to talk about the blood flow from your legs all the way up, and that includes the blood flow from your calves as well as your quads. So having that little micro bend in the knee is going to now give us a little bit of flexibility to play around and figure out what is working for and against us. So in this case, for just standing, we want to think about having like the maximum blood flow, and we want to have a balance in the amount of energy that the quads as well as the hamstrings are engaged in order to keep us straight and upright without that locked knee, right? So just a micro hip hinge, yes, on the hip hinge as well, the micro hip hinge, but the micro knee bend. And then now you have a little bit of play here, right, with the placement of your ankles. But first, think about the balance of the energy your quads and your hamstrings are using. So you don't want to be too dominant on one or the other. And then you do want to consider this alignment from this bony part of your pelvis cutting down through the side of your knees and down to the ankles in a straight line. So if you were extreme, you would have that knee travel past behind that ankle, or extreme in the other way in front of the ankle. Okay, so neither of those, just try to find that balance. Now, the standing this way versus standing with more of a lock knee will be more tiring, because when you stand with the lock knee, you kind of have, quote, locked yourself into position with your quads, which are fairly strong muscles kind of doing the work, okay? But that is impeding the blood flow for a long time. So in the gym, yes, you want to use the quads. When you're standing for the longer period of time, you do not want to contract the quads for that period of time on a habitual basis, okay? So that's what I'm talking about. So as you're practicing awareness, of that, and still having stability, it's not like you're down here or you're off kilter, you still have stability, you might actually experience that it's slightly more fatiguing to stand this way. Absolutely fine, because you actually don't want to be standing in any way for any extended period of time. Same thing as sitting. It's not that sitting is so bad, it's that we don't want to be in any one position for a long period of time. We need to shift, we need to stretch, stand, walk around, move. We need to be able to take our bodies through motion, throughout the day. So think about how that keeps blood flow going, prevents blood flow being from being restricted. Okay, and then of course, if you already have some known hip or ankle or issues or feet issues as far as any sort of joint tweaking there, or if you already have an injury around your knee, those things need to get taken care of first. And there's plenty of things that I will show you, drills and exercises continuously in order to help work on that knee stability, because anytime you have a knee issue, it's going to be coming from your hips and your ankles and your feet, ultimately one way or another. So we'll keep working on those, but today we are thinking about the knees in particular in order to create that micro bend. I hope that makes sense. All right, give it a go, have fun. This is Jen signing off, reminding you to start where you are, do what you can, use what you have, and move something.